Good morning, everyone, or whatever time of day it is where you are. Today we're going to finish up uh, my book, Angels, Demons, and Gods of the New Millennium. It was an early book of mine, 1997, and we're finishing up with the second part of the last chapter, Demons Are Our Friends. And I'm hoping to start another book tomorrow, or at least a good portion of another book tomorrow. And I still haven't completely decided because there's a couple things I'd like to do. I'd like to do quite a few things, but I'm leaning heavily toward reading at least the first major section of my book, Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. Now, this is a very thick book, or a relatively thick book, almost 300 pages. And much of it reads sort of like a textbook with material concerning each of the 78 tarot cards. But the entire first section, which is over 100 pages, concerns little bits of things you should know before you even start studying Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. And it would be probably pretty appropriate for morning readings. So if you don't have, I'm eventually going to read this anyway. So if you don't have Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, it's from Weiser, and this is the new edition. I would strongly suggest that you go to your library and get one, or I'd really suggest that you actually buy one and own it and have it in your own library to put alongside Crowley's Book of Thoth, because it's an extended commentary on Crowley's Book of Thoth. And if you find Crowley's Book of Thoth difficult, perhaps this would sort of squirt a little WD-40 lubrication into your understanding of the Thoth Tarot deck. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to start it tomorrow, but we'll see. Today, we've got to get back to the demons. If a goetic demon is simply the power and potential of 1/72nd of the human brain, why is it considered an evil spirit? Is it because it punches the time clock for Lucifer and gets bonuses for making your life miserable? Is it because it hates you because it is stuck in hell while you're free to eat pizza in your Porsche and stay up late and watch Letterman? Letterman, that's how old this essay is. Like it or not, we all come hardwired with a complete set, 12 six-packs of goetic demons. Occasionally, we unwittingly catch one and put it to work whenever we're forced to discipline ourselves to learn a specific skill, or in times of stress, when we're required to draw upon extraordinary wit or courage or talent. Most of the time, however, they just run amok at our expense as we allow them to randomly discharge their energy in whichever direction offers the least resistance. They are units of untamed natural force within ourselves that we've ignored, denied, or disowned. They surface to work their mischief when our will is ambiguous and our resistance is low. After you've committed an embarrassing act of unbelievable stupidity, you are really referring to them when you slap your forehead and scream, "I am my own worst enemy." As long as they're ignored and uncontrolled, they're as dangerous as hungry beasts in an abandoned zoo. Is it any wonder they're reluctant to be summoned into the triangle? Is it any wonder they try to frighten us into abandoning the operation by assuming unpleasant and terrifying forms? We have seen fit to be the absentee landlord to this roughneck crew for our entire life. We cannot expect them to be happy to see us the first time we appear at the door demanding that they clean up the place. Besides being stubborn and scary, Goetic spirits have earned the evil reputation because a small but very noisy percentage of magicians who involve themselves heavily in Goetic operations become quite mad. The cause of this embarrassing phenomenon can often be traced to a breach in the formula of Goetic evocation, an imbalance in the fundamental equation. To examine this flaw, we must return briefly to the Chrysalmu archetypes and review some of the attitudes and procedures of traditional evocation. Now, in this place, I've got another little section break with the poem from Eliphas Levi. Their faces and their shapes are terrible and strange. These devils by my might to angels I will change. These nameless horrors I address without affright. On them will I impose my will, the law of light. The ancient conjurer stood poised between heaven and hell. He saw himself as the pious and dutiful servant of the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God of the Bible. He aspired through the observance of religious oblations, austerities, and prayer to become worthy to possess the same powers that God vouchsafed to Moses, Aaron, and Joshua. Only by sincerely identifying himself as a conduit for this divine power could he feel empowered to summon and control the denizens of hell. Protected by this shield of righteousness, and this is a quote from the Lesser Key, armed with the power of the supreme majesty, I do strongly command thee, by him who spoke and it was done, and unto him who all creatures be obedient, by that most mighty and powerful name of God, El, strong and wonderful, Adonai, El, Elohim, Eloi, Eheya, Ashar, Eheya, Tzabaoth, Elion, Yah, Tetragrammaton, Shaddai, Lord God Most High, I do exorcise thee, and do powerfully command thee. Confident in his knowledge of the hierarchical pecking order of hell, again a quote from Lesser Key, by Baralanensis, Baldarchiensis, Paumuchia, and Apologia Sedes, by the most powerful prince, Genie, Lacadia, and ministers of the Tartarian abode, and by the chief prince of the seat of Apologia in the 9th Legion. And intoxicated by the babbling string of wild and exotic words of power. Ruabreo sotu modorio falathreo That'll change your consciousness. The ancient conjurer operated from a tenuous position of balance. This balance had to be maintained long after the evocation ceremony concluded. If the magician focused too intently, either upon micromanaging the details of his demon service, or upon being the uncompromising instrument of God's will, the seeds of madness sprouted quite rapidly. The modern magician must also remain balanced. Maybe I'll read that again. The modern magician must also remain balanced. Sadly, I've witnessed more than one mental casualty on the goetic battlefield. Once it's discovered how easy it is to call up these critters and how effectively they can be made to do your bidding, it becomes very tempting to call them all up and try to have them do everything for you. More often than not, this is a bad idea. You may think you're summoning the cooling winds to refresh your heated brow, when it's embarrassingly obvious to all your former friends that you're only blowing your own mind. While I certainly do not claim to be the world's greatest goetic magician, I've practiced the art for nearly 20 years, and feel qualified to at least voice my opinion on the subject and perhaps even offer some words of advice. I feel that goetic evocation can be an important part of the magician's arsenal of skills. First and foremost, it requires the magician to establish a link with the higher consciousness. Call it God, the holy guardian angel, the higher self, the superconsciousness, superconscious mind, or whatever. Secondly, in order to understand its subtleties and wield its power, the magician is forced to confront important emotional issues and character defects left unresolved. And if left unresolved, will continue to hinder his or her spiritual evolution. Even in a clinical setting, such confrontations are seldom pleasant. Finally, equilibrium must be achieved in all aspects of the magician's life, balancing the higher spiritual aspirations against the problems and challenges of everyday living. Properly executed, this is not only powerful magic, but a recipe for good mental health. As far as the evocation technique itself is concerned, I believe it is purely a matter of artistic taste. There are those whose respect for tradition and sense of art demands that every step of the evocation be executed precisely as outlined in the Sloan manuscripts. Traditional evocations are a thrill to behold. The reader who has been lucky enough to witness an evocation conducted by Carol Polk Runyon in Southern California has seen a master at work. Personally, I do not use the classic versions of the conjurations and constraints, nor do I protect my circle with the various Chrysalmew holy names. I believe for me to identify with mythological characters I do not admire, or guard my circle with names of gods I do not worship would not only be hypocritical, but also dangerous. I do, however, acknowledge and incorporate key elements that make this form of magic work. And I've got them listed in bullet points here. I use the circle and triangle surrounded by words and holy names sacred to me. I utilize talismans displaying the spirit sigil and the standard pentagrams and hexagrams of Solomon on my vestments. I ceremonially bathe and dress. I purify, consecrate, banish, and open the temple with appropriate ceremony. I induce a trance of righteous authority by recitation of the Gnostic Creed and the anthem from Crowley's Gnostic Mass. I recite a customized version of the preliminary invocation of the Goetia. I conjure in the Enochian language with the first call and a brief Enochian summons. I welcome the spirit upon its appearance. I give it a brief, unambiguous order and a time limit for its execution, and demand from the spirit an oath that it will be carried out. I give it license to depart after I tell it I will be kind and a generous master as long as it is faithful, as it faithfully serves me. I also inform the spirit that if it should prove disobedient, I will punish it and, if necessary, destroy it. I banish and wait till all vestiges of a spooky feeling disappear. I keep the spirit's sigil in a prepared container and watch for signs of it working on my behalf. If it fails to execute the charge in the prescribed time, I conjure it again and torture its sigil in a fire while I remind it of its original agreement. Failing again, I conjure it one more time, destroy its seal completely, and never acknowledge its existence again. Note: you'll soon run out of spirits if you demand outrageous or unreasonable things. The book outlines what these fellows do. Don't be a complete jerk. I've discovered that it's unwise to evoke a spirit to solve a problem until I am positive that I've exhausted all other avenues of resolution. If you want to hurt someone, it's much more effective and far more painful to just punch him or her in the nose and take the consequences. Asking a goetic spirit to do it for you only reveals to the demon that you are a coward and unworthy of faithful service. I cannot claim that every evocation has been a success. Boy, on the contrary, I have had a few blow up in my face. I've had quite a few blow up in my face. In fact, these failures have been more instructive than the successes. I confess that on more than one occasion, the operation succeeded superbly in bringing out the worst in me and forced me to deal with the unpleasantness on the spot. In the final analysis, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. Again, the Elvis Levy poem. These are phantoms pale of mine astonished view, yet none but I their blasted beauty can renew. For to the abyss of hell I plunge without affright. On them will I impose my will, the law of light. I've been privileged in my life to meet a number of individuals whom I consider to be, by any definition, great magicians. Some are venerable stars of the magical firmament, whose names are familiar to many in our subculture. Most, however, are ordinary women and men who have quietly achieved illumination, and with great art are proceeding to execute their wills or exercise their wills upon the world. A character trait they all have in common is an almost self-effacing refusal to hide their flaws and shortcomings. In fact, the magic of their lives appears to be built upon their ability to transmute these liabilities into assets. Never veiling their vices in virtuous words, these modern magi seek for truth even in their own naughtiness. They do not run from their demons or attempt to destroy them. Instead, they seize them one at a time, force them to recognize who's boss, clean them up, give them real energy to eat and real jobs to do. King Solomon, by tradition, the grand master of this magical tradition, is said to have built the great temple of God with the organized labor of demons. This lusty and sincere man of God, who fearlessly plumbed the infernal realms for the glory of his deity, is indeed an appropriate icon for the magical art that bears his name. I have a feeling that if we were to conjure Solomon to visible appearance today and ask him how he achieved such perfection, the wise wizard would answer simply by telling us all to go to hell. And that's the end of that chapter, and that's the end of Angels, Demons, and Gods of the New Millennium. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll be with me tomorrow morning when I will start something new, at least, and probably, if not tomorrow, very shortly, I'll be starting at least the first section of Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. So, until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. And be good to your demons. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.